everybody, and welcome to the Plugged In Show. I've got a quick question for you. Why are the best kids' movies so sad? I mean, think about it. Bambi loses a mother. The Lion King loses a father. The characters of Toy Story are constantly losing each other. Why the Inside Out movies even had a character named Sadness. Do movie makers just enjoy making kids cry? Or is there something else going on here? Well, I had a chance to talk about that very thing, or at least close to that very thing, with Chris Sanders, director of the new animated movie, The Wild Robot. Then we'll turn our attention to the movie itself and sad movies in general with my plugged-in cohorts, Bob Hoos and Brett Eckleberry. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
So, for the icebreaker, I've already confessed this to you, Brett, and Hoos already knows this quite well. I can be kind of a softie when it comes to movies. I get a little bit teary-eyed, but sometimes these movies come up and surprise you, right? You walk into a movie and you're thinking it's just going to be sort of this throwaway thing, and it's not. And you find yourself, the room gets a little bit dusty or whatnot. So I want to hear from you guys. What movie tugged at your heartstrings that you weren't expecting it to?
Yeah, I'll start. So the movie that jumps to mind immediately is The Wind Rises. So it's a 2013 movie made by Studio Ghibli, a Japanese studio.
I reviewed that movie. Actually.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
And this will maybe connect to another movie that we'll talk about a little later in the podcast. That's another Studio Ghibli production. But The Wind Rises, I didn't know 100% what to expect going into it. The story is about a young man, Jiro, who he wants to be a pilot. He can't be a pilot because of his nearsightedness, so he decides that he's going to build airplanes instead. Well, he grows up, he pursues this dream, and he gets the opportunity to build airplanes, but he is doing this all on the cusp of World War II. And where some of the movie's sadness comes in is he has such a passion and a creativity for building these airplanes, such a gift, and we know it's eventually going to be used for weapons of war. So there's sadness that comes in there, but I would say that's not even the main kind of sad thread that runs through the movie. I'd say the core of the story is Jiro's romance and his with his wife, who contracts tuberculosis. So much of the movie is about their. It's really, really sweet though. Still, just their love together. Just their sacrificing for one another.
Have we already started talking about the sad movies? Is that what we're doing?
We've already launched in the conversation already.
Kids sad movies right here.
So I'm going on too long, but this one really took me by surprise of just how sad and sweet it was. Just that relationship between husband and wife throughout the story.
No, it was a really sweet movie. And for a Studio Ghibli movie, which is known for these really fantastic fantasy stories, really, that one was very
sometimes
grounded.
so large and strange that you can barely wrap your brain around
Right.
them.
Oh, I know.
So grounded. It was so good, but so
and
sad.
I agree. I thought that the relationship between husband and wife was really poignant. I did not cry, though.
Well, as far as surprisingly sad movies for me, the first thing that came to mind was The Green Mile,
Really?
which
That's interesting.
has its content issues, but and
Tom Hanks.
but I could still bring it up, and it's one film about a guy who's a large but simple man who's falsely accused, and he's on death row. And so it doesn't sound like necessarily a cheery movie, but it's a very, very compelling and interesting movie, and you get so involved in these characters that by the end, when the man on death row has to then go to his final point, it is incredibly sad. I mean, it's one of those really moving films that I wept at unexpectedly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen the movie, but I did read the book, the Stephen King book, and it does give you this flavor of this guy who's on death row. He has been convicted of a horrible, horrible crime, but you get the sense that he's this really good guy, and there's something almost spiritual about his character.
And that's the thing. He's this hulking guy, but very sweet, a
Yeah.
sweet man too.
Yeah. So for me, the movie that unexpectedly pulled me was The Croods, oddly
The
enough.
Croods.
Yes.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, I went in, I reviewed that movie, and you see from the trailers that it's about this cave family
Yeah.
essentially, and they have to go on this big old trek because their world that they're living in is sort of literally crumbling.
Right.
So they have to go and they have to find this land beyond tomorrow or whatnot. And the journey that we see them take is incredibly funny and whimsical and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that got me was the relationship between the teenage girl who's sort of the central character and her father, who I think is Grug, voiced by Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
He gets very jealous of this boy that sort of comes along for the walk. And so there's this tug and pull between the boyfriend, quote unquote boyfriend, and the father, as that tends to happen, But at the end, there was just this beautiful scene of Grug sacrificing himself for his family. And I was so stunned by that. Like, I was enjoying the movie, but when it came to the end, I couldn't see my notes quite as well as I was before.
Yeah,
it
why
was
did
just
they-
really sweet.
They must have turned the lights down or something, Well, and that's the interesting thing about all three of these films is that they're character driven.
Yeah.
Right.
And they create these characters that are so dynamic, so immersive that you can't help but identify. And that's a great thing about story.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think it also illustrates just how we take in our own baggage, right? When we are fathers, we tend to resonate with these father-centric stories.
Sure.
If we own pets, we tend to resonate with animals in peril or
No,
whatnot.
not a chance.
But it is sort of interesting. It is very dependent on what we bring to the party.
Absolutely. And one other thing about these movies that we've discussed, they're not just sad.
Right.
There's a lot of
Right.
moments of sweetness. There's a lot of moments of humor, of spirituality.
Hey, we could have a podcast about
You know? How about
We
that?
could talk about this.
We could talk
How
about
about
this. Well, speaking of these movies that are not just sad, they have these great resonant moments. The director of The Croods, I actually had a chance to talk with. He just directed a new movie called The Wild Robot. We had a fantastic conversation. It was short, but I loved every minute of it. So take a listen if you would. I'm here with Chris Sanders, director of Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, and now The Wild Robot. Welcome, Chris.
Good morning.
So tell me a little bit about The Wild Robot. I saw it. It's a very beautiful movie. Can you explain a little bit about what's going on with this one?
Yeah, this all came from this marvelous book written by Peter Brown, which is very, very popular for a reason. It's a story of a robot that wakes up on the shore of an uninhabited island. And she doesn't yet know that she's lost. Her programming kicks in and she starts doing the job that she was programmed to do, which is to locate whoever it was that purchased her and do tasks that she's assigned. A Rosin robot is a task-oriented robot. It will complete a task no matter what. And the task that she accidentally runs across, quite literally, is raising a gosling. And that is something she wasn't programmed to do because, again, she was never supposed to be here in the first place.
Right.
So the journey of parenthood is something absolutely unique, I think, in an animated film like this.
Yeah, yeah. That is a great place to jump into to just sort of what you have done throughout your entire career. So many of your movies have said such a strong parenting connection. What is it that pulls you to these types of movies?
I think they relate to real life. There's these unpredictable, subtle things that drive stories like this that I think are incredibly relatable, but they're really, really powerful, I think. And I'm drawn to the emotional depth of things like this. I want to feel when I go to a movie. I want to be taken through a journey. The very essence of a story is change, a character that changes through a journey or changes the world around them or both. And that's definitely what's going on in the story. But there's also like really unique aspects to this. The look of the film is absolutely groundbreaking. Dreamworks has accomplished something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. Anybody who sees this is going to see something they have never seen before.
Oh man, see, now I want to talk about that scene. But there are some beautiful, beautiful moments. I mean, visually, this is a stunning film. Even just the visuals alone can make you tear up. But as you say, you're drawn to the emotion of these stories. This is a very sweet film, but at times a sad one. And it seems like, oddly enough, movies made for kids as their primary audience, they often come with this bittersweet sensation, or this sad sensation where you have loss, you have trauma. Why do you think that kids movies are able to deal with this maybe a little bit better than many adult movies?
I'm not sure why, but I agree with what you said. I think that you can really tell any story if you're just careful about how you tell it. And so any theme like this is something that I think we're drawn to as people. I know that as a kid, I was drawn to stuff that was scary and sad just as much as I was drawn to things that were joyful. And it's just the way that we're programmed, but I like stories that don't shy away from those things. And I also think that these are the stories and the films that endure. They really,
Yeah.
they last.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that having that emotional hook can just make them. I mean, because the movies that impacted me as a child, they stick with me as an adult. And this feels like potentially that type of movie for a lot of kids, right?
Yeah, I really hope so. It has that feel to me as well. I have to say, one of the stories behind the making of this film is that the way that the crew, I guess, adopted this is like nothing I've ever seen before. This was a labor of love, and my producer actually said this during an interview, and it really struck me as accurate. He said this was the movie of a lifetime.
Wow.
For all of us, and it really shows. There was a moment where I was looking at a particular effects shot, and it was so spectacular. It took my breath away. And after that meeting, I was talking to my producer, Jeff Herman, and I said, "Why does this movie look this good?" and he said, "People love this film. Everyone exceeded every expectation that I had, and included in that is the music. Chris Barrett's music is absolutely stunning." And one of the reasons to see this is not only the story and the visuals, but also to hear this music at this scale it's hard to do. I can't overstate it.
Thank you so much, Chris, for your time. Good luck with this movie. I'm excited to see how it does.
Oh, I can't wait. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so that was...
That was really, it was one of those conversations that I wanted to hear more of.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear the whole podcast worth.
I wanted to talk more.
I mean, the movie, I've only seen the trailer. It looks so great. It really, you've seen the movie.
I have.
What about it? Let's tell us.
So we'll just start from where you just launched the look of the movie.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful movie. It almost feels at times like this sort of impressionistic painting. And there are images that take your breath away. There's a time when the main robot character, Roz, touches this tree, follows a butterfly, touches this tree, and the butterflies just fly out and fan out in all directions. And it's just, it is staggering. It is something that I think animated movies do so well, is
Right.
have those really powerful images.
Yeah.
But the story was really nice too. It was a really sweet story.
Well, the trailer certainly looks like it's got a great story with that robot becoming a mom.
Yeah. And I really resonated with that, and as I was sort of talking with Chris, we talked a little bit about how this really does feel like it was made for moms as much as for kids. Right. Because it has those messages, it has that power. One of the other nice things about this movie, very, very little actual content that you need to worry about. There might be one misuse of God's name. You don't have, obviously, since you're talking about a robot in a forest full of animals, you don't have to deal with a lot of sensuality. You do have these moments of poignancy, of of violence too. I mean, the movie can get hard to watch, I think, for certain kids.
Yeah,
So
there's an implication in the trailer that a lot of other robots come dropping down.
yes, that comes toward the end of the movie. But even in the beginning, I mean, one of the themes of this movie is that everything on this island is trying to eat everything else. It's nature.
Circle of life.
And you have these delightful moments where, like Roz, when she first lands, she'll pick up a crab and she'll say, "Can I be of assist?" And then all of a sudden this bird snatches the crab, flies away. Tense. So you definitely see this as an animal eat animal world, and that can be a little bit traumatic. Right?
Sure.
So yeah, it was a really, really fun movie, I thought, and definitely read our review. I really thought it was a good, strong movie, and as we sort of look forward to our conversation, we know that a lot of some of the best kids movies have that hint of sadness. They have those bittersweet moments, and that is something we'll be talking about at length after a word for our sponsors. You.
Friends, are you feeling glum? Down in the dumps? Is your face like a wet weekend? Well, take heart. Plugged In has waited. Turn that frown of yours upside down. How? Why, by getting your very own copy of Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family. Just picture your joy when the book is delivered straight to your home. Imagine your glee when you touch its smooth yet supple cover. Just look at that happy little couch on the cover. Doesn't that red pillow just perk you right up? And then, as if that wasn't enough, you get to read it. All 275 joyful pages of it. Well, sure, it's not 275 pages of dad jokes. Becoming a Screen-Savvy Family deals with some serious business. But taking control of your family's screen time? Learning how to deal with our culture's never-ending stream of entertainment? Well, if that's not enough to make moms and dads grin, I don't know what is. Oh, and you don't have to spend a lot of bucks for those yucks. For a gift of any amount, we'll give you a copy. That's right. You don't even need to shed a single tear. That's a lot of happiness from one single book. But if you still want more, tell you what, draw a bright smiley face on the cover. We won't mind.
Why, thank you, Mr. Announcer Person.
Sure.
That was great. So, author Madeline L'Engle once wrote, "You have to write the book that wants to be written. And if the book will be too difficult for grown-ups, then you write it for children." It feels like that can be true for movies as well.
Oh, yeah.
Would you guys agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I love that quote. I had never heard it before. So thank you for introducing it to me. But I do think it's true. I like to think that there's kind of a certain truth and simplicity that we're very attuned to as children. We feel things very acutely. We have very big emotions. Things can really connect with the core of our being. And I think that, as we age, things get a little more complex.
Yeah,
the
no kidding.
things, as we develop. But I think that simplicity is still very powerful, and it's best not to lose it entirely, even as we age and we understand things a little bit more. I think kids love clearly defined roles. I think good guys versus bad guys, right? And just that kind of stuff. But as we understand the world is more complex than just good guys versus bad guys, there's still some truth in that simplicity that we really have at the core of our being, especially in our earlier years.
Yeah, and I believe that kids' movies give we adults who become more judgmental, we become more, we close our emotions off so much. But kids' movies give us an excuse to reconnect with the kid that's still inside us,
Right.
And I that's great.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things. It's usually movies that are dealing with. Actually, I think I get more focused and more emotional at kids' movies than I do at adult movies. I was talking about The Green Mile earlier, but that's one of the rare adult movies that sort of caused a tear. Most of the time, it is a kids' movie that can deal with, as Brett was saying, a lot of those basic ideas that that kids are already connected with.
Right.
The fact, the thing, childhood is a time of loss as well as love.
That's a great point. That's a really great point, because I do think as parents sometimes we want to protect our kids. We want our kids to have happy childhoods, right? And that's a really viable and important goal.
Sure.
But when you think about sort of this world that is sort of opening up to them, you know, they're dealing with anger. They're dealing with loss, as you say. They're dealing with sometimes deep moments of sad and grief and fear. And sometimes, as you were sort of hinting at, Brett, these movies, these children's movies can deal with it with a clarity, right? You can see these emotions so clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say not just a clarity, but a sincerity.
Oh, that's a great
I
point.
think that kids' movies are probably the most sincere of our media today.
Yeah.
Compared to, you know, think of Marvel movies or a lot of movies for adults today. There's always this layer of sarcasm, or there's often this layer of sarcasm. Even emotional moments tend to get undercut by a joke. Right? As if we're afraid to kind of go all the way and feel that feeling or whatever, right? So yeah, I think kids' movies really lean into the sincerity as well, because that's what kids are looking for, and that clarity that really connects with them.
Yeah.
And we
Connects with
adults
us, too.
would find that sincerity hokey.
Well, exactly. But I think when it's
outside of a kid's film.
and it has to be done well. Like we are so cynical as adults that it has to be done well. It has to be done with that sincerity, because if you don't bring your A game to the party, then it just falls flat, right? It can be a joke that just sort of lands shallow. So, Brett, I know that you saw a very, very difficult movie. I don't know if it would it be fair to say that it is a kid's movie or no?
So I would say no. So just to give, well, it depends on the age of your child, essentially. So the movie in question is from Studio Ghibli, that Japanese animation studio that I mentioned earlier. It's from 1988, and it's called Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah, and the reason we're talking about it is it actually just landed on Netflix. So this is the first time that probably a lot of people have been exposed to this particular movie.
First time on a streaming service, if I'm not mistaken. So the movie has earned quite a reputation, to say the least, as a tearjerker. And a lot of people, when I mentioned, hey, I'm going to be reviewing Grave of the Fireflies, they were kind of like, buckle up, make sure you have tissues. And they weren't lying when they said that. It's in brief, the movie is about two children. It's a 14-year-old boy and his 4-year-old sister at the waning days of World War II in Japan.
Another World War II movie.
Another World War II movie. As the war is winding down, America and Japan are still at war. The Americans have the upper hand, so they are putting pressure on Japan to surrender. They're bombing factories. They're firebombing villages, and in air raids. And these kids lose their mother within the first 10 minutes of the movie in one of these air raids. And so the remainder of the movie is these two kids really fighting for survival in an increasingly devastated landscape.
Man, oh man.
So it's before the atomic attack?
You know, it actually, the movie runs concurrent with that, but the atomic attack is not even mentioned. Oh. So eventually you find out Japan surrendered, but since we're in the perspective of these children, they don't really know all that's going on.
They're not following the headlines.
Yeah, sure, and the boy, actually, his father, who is not present in the film, he's a naval officer. The boy has like this very strong sense of like national pride. And so when he finds out Japan surrendered, he is like in shock of this as much as anything else. So, it covers a lot of different things, in particularly the firebombing and the destruction of Kobe Japan in specific. That's where the family lives to start the film.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about how the parents died in this. I was just reading something that 84 Disney movies have plots involving the loss of both parents. This doesn't count just the loss of the mom.
Wow.
This doesn't count the loss of the dad. Both parents are gone. And you do have those notable examples where one parent dies really tragically in these films. And this is just Disney we're talking about. Why do you think that these animated studios, these studios that really cater to kids, why do they go to that direction, losing a kid's parents?
I believe it's because the films can also show you getting to the other side. I remember reading a story about this person who would read Charlotte's Web, the little kid story about a spider and a pig. And it's rather sad too, and they made a sad movie about it. But this person would read it over and over and over, and someone asked, "Well, why? Why do you read this? Is it because you're hoping for some sort of a different ending?" And they said, "No, it's because you get to the end, and there are these beautiful moments, and then I realize I can keep going. It's not too much for me. I can keep going."
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of these sad movies for kids, is that it helps instill in them that there are ways to continue on, to make it to the other side of these painful things in life. Because let's face it, life can be pretty terrible sometimes.
Yeah.
And preparing kids for that fact, and the fact that there are ways through, is important.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really good point, because I think movies, any media really, but movies that have that level of sadness kind of woven into the story can also give us some of our most cathartic moments coming out of that. You know, I'm reminded of Inside Out, right? A great movie that talks about emotions in a very intelligent way, and just how early in life, you know, it presents the emotions as all kind of distinct from each other. But then as the story goes on, as the child ages, you find out, okay, well, maybe sadness and joy mix to form like a really powerful emotion that we feel. To your question about why maybe Disney movies love killing off parents.
Those poor parents.
You know, I think if I had to venture a guess, I would say it's because Disney, in making animation maybe more directed towards children, the loss of a parent, I think, is something that's very present for a child too. So if you're talking about, again, like kind of those very like clear and simple things, like that just is very clarified in like a child's mind, really in all of our minds, the fear of loss, but of a parent specifically, I think that really connects with a child. But to your point, Bob, bringing it back around, so where this character does make it through that and kind of moves past that, or carries it with them still, but is able to continue on, I think makes for a very
the next chapter.
It makes a very powerful story.
It is interesting because when you look at this, you think of these movies as being sad movies, but they're really not about sadness as much as what you were saying about moving on, about dealing with it, about teaching kids that there is, you know, a morning after, right, that you can go on to.
And the parents don't always die in a sad movie. I mean, maybe there's a lot of Disney movies that they do, but the fact is that there are a lot of sad films that also say, you know what, your family, your mom, your dad, they can help you through these sad moments.
Inside Out is a great example of that, right?
Right.
Because we, again, as parents, I think we just forget how deeply our kids feel. And how deeply they process sometimes these new emotions. And I think that in some ways, movies can be the very first contact that kids have with some of these powerful emotions, the sense of grief, the loss, all that kind of stuff. And it feels like movies can, and let me emphasize can, because we're going to turn this around in a minute, they can provide sort of a safe space where kids can process it. They can feel sad along with the characters.
Right.
But moms and dads are there to help, as you were saying, Bob,
Right.
walk them through it. And that's an important thing. Now, I do know that there are kids who, especially when it comes to the loss of a parent, not every child is going to be able to handle that. I know that there are children who deal with anxiety who that message hits more deeply. And all of a sudden, instead of becoming like a teaching tool, it becomes the stuff of nightmare, right? How, as a parent, do you help your kids? How do you know if your kid is going to be, number one, maybe more attuned to a message like that and be impacted by it negatively? Do you guys have any thoughts?
I do. I think that parents can help gauge a child's sensitivity by also connecting with them in other ways. You don't have to just say, okay, well, we're going to throw up a great sad movie just to see how you react to this.
Let's watch Old Yeller.
That's right. You can find out how your child will deal with some of these kinds of issues by doing things like reading to them. Start young. Read, because a lot of parents read little storybooks to their kids. The great thing about reading as compared to films, when you're watching a movie, generally you turn the lights down, you close the curtains, everything is dark and focused on that screen, and the movie just keeps rolling. Mm-hmm. When you're reading a storybook with the kids, very often they'll ask questions as you're going along. They'll make statements. They'll respond to what you've just read, and that give and take really starts opening up a dialogue in a variety of ways. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe you can judge your child's sensitivity to certain issues by finding the right books.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think really can make a difference.
I love that suggestion.
Yeah, if I could make another plug for becoming a screen savvy family. Adam actually has a really good story in the book that he writes about his daughter. I think Adam Holtz. Yes, our youngest. I think it was Adam's youngest daughter was really struggling with a movie in which a parent dies. Now I think it was an animal movie. I think it was like a bear, like a mama bear dies. But and that was a moment where he had to stop things, have a conversation, and really kind of process that through with his daughter. You guys are parents, so you would know this better than me and having experience with this. But I would just encourage parents that your kid's best, but no one's going to be perfect with this stuff. There's going to be something that comes up that maybe affects your kid in a way that you did not expect.
Yeah.
And I think
the crudes can come along.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Plenty of stuff comes along that surprises us when we're watching it as adults. But I just think I would encourage parents, just be available for your kids, right? I think I have a memory, I don't even remember what the movie was. It was an old cowboy movie. My dad loved cowboy movies. And I guess I had gotten attached to like a side character who dies like near the end of the movie, and
as side characters
do. But as a kid, it almost feels like you're watching a documentary. Yeah. It feels very real, and I was distraught by that. But my parents were there, and even though I'm sure they thought my reaction might have been a little silly, they were there to support me. So even though it was still sad, I felt their love and support in that. Yeah. Very clearly.
That's the great thing about watching movies with your kids too, is that you can identify with that emotion. Yeah. If they're feeling something, you probably are feeling it too.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, here's how this movie makes me feel, and here's why it makes me feel that way. Mm-hmm. What about you?
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. You need to be cognizant of asking open-ended questions. How are you feeling? Tell me about what you're processing right now. Right. Because I think that those open-ended questions when you're watching can really spark a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation. What you were saying, Bob, in terms of reading, I think is a really important one, right? Because kids do ask questions as they're going through these stories. They say, what's going on there? Why did that person do that? Why did that person die? those are really critical moments of conversation. Those don't happen so much in movies. But as a parent, you almost have to be watching your child as much as you're watching the movie to make sure that they're processing it well. And don't be afraid to pause the movie.
That's
Don't
one
be
of the
afraid to stop.
challenges and joys of being a parent.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, being able to connect with your kids in these areas is very rewarding.
Yeah.
As a parent looking on.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. It even brings me back to the wild robot. There's interactions. Roz, the robot, she says, "I don't have the programming to be a mother." And she's talking to this possum mother, the possum mom who's dealing with 7 kids who are constantly pretending that they're dying, says, "Nobody does.
Yeah.
We just have to do the best we can."
You talk about a film that appeals to a mom, too. There are going to be a lot of young moms going, "I'm with you, baby."
That's absolutely right. So we do the best we can in these moments.
Right.
And I think the best that when we are at our best, it's when we're talking with our kids, when we're asking our kids good, important questions.
Yep.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, and now it is time for one of my favorite parts of this entire podcast. It's game time. And the game today is Name That Movie. So we pick a movie, we think of a sentence, we ask the rest of our panel of experts to guess what that movie is.
Log line. That's what you got to come up with.
Yeah,
a log line.
That's right.
A log line, that's very good.
There you go.
So let us just dive right in. Mr. Hoos?
Oh,
Let's
I get
go
to go
with
the
you.
first log line. Okay.
Yes.
I'll do one with a little bit of sadness, too.
Oh,
There you go.
good deal.
Okay.
'Cause-
Oh, yeah.
'cause
The
topic,
theme is robots.
That's right.
Robots. Yeah.
I knew I forgot
Robots.
to say something.
All right. A young boy grieving over the loss of his brother teams up with his brother's robot to accidentally become a superhero.
That would be...
Big Hero 6.
There you go.
There you go.
Great movie.
It was a great...
Really
Yeah,
good
it was
movie.
fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those that had those sad moments at the beginning, but then it just, in terms of the relationships and his relationship with his aunt, it just becomes
Yeah.
this really warm family kind of movie.
Yeah. It was really fun. That was sort of like the beginning of Disney's latest renaissance, right? It just sort of Pixar had sort of stolen all the thunder, and Disney comes up with Big Hero 6, and it was just really, really nice.
And talk about sincerity, and they do not shy away from the grief that the younger brother is feeling and everything like that, and it's all the more powerful because of that.
It's a great symbol, actually, for our entire conversation.
Yeah.
Because the big old robot is so nice and squishy and cuddly and very, very willing to listen. So parents, listen.
Warm, loving, healing.
Okay. Well, so the last time I played Name That Movie, Paul just guessed the movie that I had.
Blade Runner.
Out of hand. Okay, I was going to give you the opportunity to do it now.
Star Wars.
No, fortunately. I was
All
going to
right.
be a little worried if you did it again. So here's my sentence. A soldier on a secret mission to destroy an AI superweapon comes to realize that the robots may possess more humanity than their flesh and blood counterparts.
That sure sounds like Blade Runner.
It is not, though. I promise you. It's a
Interesting.
little more recent than Blade Runner.
I was going to say Terminator at one point, but it's
Yeah,
not that one. No,
yeah.
that one.
You don't sympathize with
There's
the robots.
No, yeah,
and-
no humanity.
Yeah, right.
Boy, that's a good question.
Do you want me to read it again?
Yes, do read it again.
Okay.
And maybe give us an extra clue.
Okay.
Wait for somebody to call in from home.
Right.
Let us know what it is.
I know. Okay. A soldier on a secret mission to destroy an AI superweapon comes to realize that the robots may possess more humanity than their flesh and blood counterparts. And I would say the hint is, and part of the surprise in the movie is, the AI superweapon is not what they expected. In fact, it looks a lot like a little girl.
Oh. What?
I know what this one is. I can see the pictures, but I can't remember the title.
BioShock.
No.
No.
No. Okay, what is it? You've stumped us.
The Creator.
That's
Oh,
it.
The
The Creator.
Yeah, it came out
And
last
that's
year.
a relatively new film.
Yeah, it came out last year. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen it, so.
Okay, it's worth watching, I'd say.
But be sure to check out the Plugged In review.
Exactly right.
Full review.
All right, so mine is robots are trying to take over the world. Surprise, surprise, which puts an interesting twist in one family's cross-country trip.
Oh.
I think I know this too.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Go.
I think it's Mitchell's versus the Machines.
There it is.
Yeah.
got it.
Okay.
There it
All
is.
right.
Yes.
all
yes.
right.
Yes.
Wow.
And talk about a good movie.
Yeah.
That and anybody at home who hasn't seen that one, they need to watch it.
Again, read the full review. There are
Yes.
definitely some
Yes.
issues for parents to be aware
Sure.
of, but it
Yep.
is a really very nice movie.
And really another like father-daughter
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
connection movie, which is really cool.
Well, yeah, those movies, they just tear me up, man. Those father-daughter
Yeah,
movies.
whenever there's a daughter involved, it always gets me for some reason. I'm not sure.
I think
I guess my connection with my kids.
Well, I think that that's really true, right? When we are parents, we come into these movies and we really feel the characters, that what they're feeling, the pressures that they're dealing with, and it's just so powerful. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of fun, ironically. Really, really enjoyed talking about
I shed a
these.
tear.
We're going to have to get you to cry. We're rooting for Brett. Brett told me that he doesn't actually cry during movies. We're going to work on that.
We talked about The Wind Rises. That got me a little misty when I was
a little
watching.
misty.
Yeah, it
we
did.
need to see full-on tears trickling down your chin. That's what we're going for.
We were always poke.
That's right.
We could always poke him in the eye.
Full on ugly cry.
Full-on ugly cry. So anyway, we would also love to hear from you who are watching and listening. Please connect with us. Talk to us on Facebook. Talk to us on Instagram. Leave us a voicemail on the Plugged In Show homepage, or send us an email at team@thepluggedinshow.com and let us know, what do you think is the saddest movie you have ever seen? Do you cry during these movies, or are you like Brett? Soulless, heartless.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. So be sure to chime in. We would love to hear what you think. And be sure to join us next time when we talk about the movie White Bird on the next episode of The Plugged In Show.